There's a scene where Haku tells Chihiro, "I've always been watching you." When Chihiro asks, "How do you know my name?" he answers, "I have known you since you were little." At the scene where Haku passes on the rice bowl to Chihiro, Haku can't remember his name. After all, his name has been taken away. That's why he says, "I can't even remember my own name, but it's strange, I remember you." Again, most people just follow the spoken lines, and if we take the line as it is, Haku is the guardian god of a river called Kohaku River, who rescues Chihiro when she's about to drown there. So he knows her because of that incident. At least that's what the script says. He says, "I knew you since you were a child." However, the line that says, "I can't even remember my own name, but it's strange I remembered you," doesn't make much sense. For example, when Chihiro worries about Haku when he's injured, Kamaji says, "It's love." He says, "This is love, love." But this too is too unlikely for any of Miyazaki's previous anime. Even if the protagonists in his movies like each other, they usually don't express their feelings in such a straightforward way. So why is it different here? There is also something called the mysterious lyrics. When Miyazaki made the movie, he sent some lyrics to Joe Hisaishi, the music producer, to tell him the image of the movie. I just quoted parts of it. It's a poem titled "At the River That Day." "I go from the backyard where the sun shines, through the forgotten door and down the path where the hedges cast shadows on. The young child running from the other side is me, soaking wet and crying. I follow the footsteps of the sandbox farther to the now buried river. The aquatic plants sway between the garbage. I met you in that small river. My shoes flow away slowly and get drawn into a small swirl and disappear. The dust that covered my heart and the fog that hid my eyes go away. The hand touches the air and the feel take the bounce of the ground. I live for someone and someone who lived for me. I went to the river that day. I went to your river." Well, it didn't become an official song, but these mysterious lyrics such as "I return soaking wet," "My shoes are flowing away slowly," "Someone who lived for me," seem to be hinting something. After all, he did not adopt this song in the main story, but it helps us think about the strange scene where Chihiro remembers the past. It's toward the end of the story where she flies with Haku. It's a scene after they go to see Zeniba, ask her to forgive Haku, and now she flies in the sky on a white dragon, the incarnation of Haku. It is the biggest climax of the movie. There Chihiro suddenly remembers. Well, like this. A hand is stretching out into the water. But the thing is, the size of the splash here is too big for just a hand put in the water. We can also think that it's because Chihiro drops, but no. If it's after she drops, then there shouldn't be such a big splash of water before the hand goes in. It looks like a hand stretches out toward the splash, caused by something bigger. To make this clear, let's look at the storyboard in the scene. You see the same cuts in the storyboard, but what I paid attention to is the instruction that says a child's hand stretches out quickly. It says a child's hand, and that's because they needed to distinguish it with Chihiro's hand. It's not her hand, it's somebody else's. But they didn't want to publicize whose hand it was. This scene is trying to depict how a hand stretches out for something large that has fallen into the water, but why a child hand, not Chihiro's hand? In the next scene, Chihiro remembers it. Now, please take a look at her shoulders. The color of the face and the shoulders is the same. This tells us that she's naked. The reason why Chihiro is naked in this scene is that when she's small, she falls into that river naked. Well, kids are often dressed only in underwears where they play in rivers. Just like that, Chihiro is half naked when she falls into that river. Well, then, the child who's reaching the hand out is wearing a t-shirt. Isn't that weird? If that hand was Chihiro's hand, the situations would contradict, because she's at least not wearing anything on her upper body. The question is then, what is being depicted? The child's hand is extending to where someone fell. According to the storyboard, it's a child's hand, but it's not Chihiro because Chihiro fell into the river naked. A child's hand stretched out to save her. In other words, there should be some child wearing a t-shirt who reached out to help Chihiro. And who's that? The main part of discussion in this part is to answer the question of who that is. When Chihiro says, "How do you know my name?" Haku says, "I've known you since you were little." The reason why Haku knows Chihiro from a young age despite the fact that he can't even remember his own name is that he's Chihiro's dead brother. Chihiro did not float her shoes in the river. She fell in the river. Her brother pulled her out to help her, but instead, he was swept out by the river and did not return. The scene shows how her brother became a god by sacrificing his life for someone else. Chihiro doesn't remember this. He says, "I don't remember this, but I heard it from my mother." Even though she says she floated the shoes, she doesn't remember it at all. So, her mother didn't tell Chihiro that she had an older brother or he died because of her. She only told Chihiro that she almost drowned in a river when she was little. That's why she doesn't remember the incident, but Haku does. The reason why Haku says, "It's strange that I remember you," and Kamaji affirms, "It's the power of love," it's because it's fraternal love. Haku doesn't want to hurt Chihiro's feeling, so even if he remembers what happened, he won't say it, nor will Kamaji. Or maybe Haku himself doesn't remember the incident. In the movie, they say Kohaku River was filled up with earth and disappeared later. The expression implies death, because this idea of landfill is a metaphor for burial, funeral, or a corpse. But he still is not a perfect god because Chihiro can see him. The real gods are only visible near Abraya at night after the lights are turned on. In the end, he does turn into a perfect god. It's a long story, and the free part still continues, but I want to finish up the free part with the mystery of Chihiro's parents. So, the seventh mystery of the 13 mysteries of Spirited Away is the mystery of Chihiro's parents. Take a look at this. Chihiro says, "Mom, that building's making noise." But the mother says, "It's just the wind." Then she turns around, but she doesn't look at Chihiro. Chihiro keeps pulling her mother's hand and talking to her, but she ignores her and says to the father, "I should have brought a sandwich from the car." In the scenes around here, Chihiro continues to try attracting the mother's attention, but she hardly sees Chihiro's face. She talks to Chihiro without looking at her, but she sees the father in the eyes when they talk. Her attitudes toward Chihiro and the father are too different. We've all realized that Chihiro's mother is acting strange. Everyone who saw it noticed it because the mother is walking the rocky area of the river, which is dangerous for herself to walk on. And she says to the father, "Oh no," and hugs him. Then the father goes, "It's dangerous." But when they are moving on, all she does to Chihiro is to turn around and says, "Be careful, Chihiro," in a cold manner. It's because she unconsciously treats Chihiro badly because she's responsible for the eldest son's death. She does that unconsciously though. In her mind, she's taking good care of her daughter and she knows it's not her fault that her son died. But unconsciously, her true feeling reveals in her attitudes, such as not looking at Chihiro's face or talking to her in a cold tone of voice. The parents are hiding the fact that they lost their eldest son to Chihiro. That's why the mother is cold to Chihiro. Finally, everything makes sense now. The reason why the mother is being so cold to Chihiro without any explanations, or why Haku says to Chihiro that he knew her for a long time, but doesn't tell her where and when they've met. If Haku was a god, as he said, then it doesn't make sense that Chihiro can see him from the first scene, because in this world, gods are not visible to human beings until it gets dark at night and they arrive at the resort kind of place. Then they finally become substantial. Haku is turning into god of Kohaku River, but he's not one yet. I will make sure to define what these gods in Spirited Away are in the limited broadcast. Now, Haku died for Chihiro, but Chihiro, in return, went to apologize to Zeniba for Haku by taking a one-way train. Traveling on a one-way train means that she went to the world of death, where she can't return from for Haku. By doing so, the theme of her being able to live by someone's favor and her returning the favor by living for someone else conclude. It's clear in anyone's eyes that Chihiro goes to the world of death. After Kamaji tells her that no one can return from the world of death, she still rides on the train without a way back, which runs endlessly on water that looks like sticks. It means that she's willing to give up her life to save Haku. That's how the theme completes here. She realizes that she has never noticed that someone has saved her life. Then she decides that she's going to risk her life for someone as well. So at the end, the theme makes a full circle. How the theme of the movie goes round is not explained through lines, but through Hisaishi's dramatic music. That's why the structure of the movie is hard to understand. It's similar to how Giovanni, the protagonist of the Night of the Milky Way train, lives like a ghost in the beginning. Doesn't focus during his lesson at school in the first part of the story. That's because a poaching ship that hunt sea otters got into an accident with his father, a fisherman, on board. Giovanni is so worried because his father might be dead. That's why he's absent-minded at school. It's hard to tell if he's alive or dead. But then he gets on the Milky Way train with Campanella, who has died for someone else, and listening to the story of a passenger of the Titanic who did not try to survive by pushing away others for the sake of her students. Then at last, Giovanni regains life. The safety of his father's ship ends up unknown after all. At the end, Campanella's father says calmly, Campanella probably won't make it. But at the same time, he tells Giovanni, I met your father, he'll be back soon. That's how he knows his father is alive, so Giovanni's father probably comes back safely. The fact that the ship made it back in spite of the accident means that he was able to live by someone's favor. That teaches Giovanni what it means to live for someone and becomes an energetic and cheerful boy again. Well, that's the basic plot of the Night of the Milky Way train. It's the same as the plot of Spirited Away. Chihiro in Spirited Away also lives her life absent-minded in the opening scene. It's uncertain whether she's alive or dead. She has no desire or appetite, like No Face. Spirited Away is a story in which she regains humanity from the state where she has no desire or goal, like No Face. The reason why Chihiro's family are drawn into the mysterious world in the first place is because none of them really had a life. The mother can't face her daughter because of the death of her eldest son. The reason why her father decides to move is because he wants to change her mood. He doesn't give any reasons for moving like it's because of his job. At least it's not for Chihiro. The only reason can be that he wants to change his wife's mood because she's been closing her mind all this time. And Chihiro is in despair because she's separated from her friends. The question is, how are they going to live after the movie ends? I'm going to talk about it in the second half, but in fact, Miyazaki has a great happy ending for them. But the structure of the movie makes it hard for us to tell that it's a happy ending. It's a movie that Miyazaki made for himself. He loves his characters from the bottom of his heart, so he prepares a grand finale that made everyone happy, but I'll discuss that on the second half. I'll stop here for the first half today. In the second half, I'll tell a story that is a bit scary, but it will become a happy ending, so please do not worry. There are these stories which he told only to his favorite animators, and some are written in this book as evidence, but really, I'm going to talk about a really happy ending. Okay, so time for a questionnaire.